All right. Well, a old member of the Majority Report, who I really do miss their contributions to the show, Jamie Peck. She was on Chris Cuomo and apparently had such a good segment that it may have changed Cuomo's mind on a few things. So I wanted to take a look at that with you guys. So let's just go right into it.
Mass resistance to medical debt. If everybody burns their medical bills in front of the health insurance company offices en masse, that's going to create change.
Boy, do I have a lot to say about this discussion.
Wow, that's a great idea.
Chris Cuomo of News Nation had on Jamie Peck for a lively discussion about for-profit healthcare and Luigi Mangione. Now, Peck is a self-described communist and host of the Party Girls podcast and also formerly of the Majority Report, and is introduced here on News Nation as a spokesperson for the Luigi Mangione Defense Fund. Speaking of this fundraising that is going on.
Wow.
Now, I want to be clear. It's not clear to me whether or not Jamie actually set this up. Whoever set it up is anonymous, but she is speaking on behalf of them here, and they have raised over $150,000. The goal is $500,000. To be clear, they go on to write as well, this is a preemptive legal fundraiser for the suspect allegedly involved in the shooting of the United Healthcare CEO. We are not here to celebrate violence, but we do believe in the constitutional right of fair legal representation. So I'm not clear whether or not this was set up before it was known that Luigi Mangione can clearly pay for his own lawyer. So again, it's not clear to me where the money's actually going to go. I don't think it sounds like they're not going to accept it from what I'm reading, but regardless.
Tech, I'll actually say that they're not talking about it enough. No, because this is the closest we've all gotten to class consciousness and having an actual conversation about this. The fact that it's still about the shooter, the shooting, and it's not just going based to, like, right back to, no, these CEOs are totally screwing us, and it's the system, we need to change it. You know, we were at the cusp of having the right conversation, and you know what? No, this is how we do it. I totally disagree. Talking about Luigi as long as possible is how we start changing.
So I want to get to the first clip here, and I got a lot to say about what this.
The fact that the right wing isn't even staying with this, like the right wing isn't even the ones having like the bad takes on this. Surprisingly,
just in terms of the discourse around
right-wingers,
what is going on right now in terms of healthcare, but also the discourse around what the left actually is.
Help me understand. Why is it a beautiful thing? Why do you support him assassinating another human being in cold blood?
So I was definitely joking a little bit, obviously drawing a comparison between what Donald Trump said about himself and the sort of explosion, this appetite, this excitement for the conversation that Luigi Mangione started. But I do think to call this an act of terrorism is an insult to the intelligence of the American people. Terrorism is
okay. Hold on. Those CEOs are mass murderers in a different way. I'm in Canada, but the USA is savage. If you break, yeah, dude, I have to live through this, man. I have private health insurance. I have to live through this. Even so, because you're in Canada, I can educate you a little bit on this. I have what you would consider one of the best plans that you can be on, as far as like in America. I can't say exactly which one, but I know a lot of you guys can guess. Somehow, some way, I still have to worry. Like every time I go in for something, I have to worry like I don't have insurance because they'll just arbitrarily decide, oh, you didn't need that at that time, so we're not going to cover it. They did that with an x-ray that turned out that I needed an MRI instead because, get this, you can't show kidney issues on an x-ray. Weird, right? You know, it's not like I had a bruised bone or any of that. But then the MRI got covered because that ended up being something. That's how this works. But guess I couldn't repeat, like I couldn't go and just say, hey, can you guys not charge me for the x-ray? I asked. That's about all we can do. And I'm not even kidding. We're told that we should. And I'm not even kidding about this, though. If you guys do get a medical bill and your first instinct is not to call to just say, hey, can you lower this? Just live by this motto. The worst they can say is no. Just call. Don't let your anxiety get the best of you. Trust me, I have some, phone call anxiety occasionally too. I understand. But no, you need to, yeah. It's essentially, no, that's exactly it. And then you have to essentially just do the JFK Jr. faith healing, and that's why a lot of that holistic stuff is also pushed, and strangely, oddly enough, you actually bring up a good point. I know you're kind of joking here, but the fact that it's JFK Jr., like the fact that he's one of those, crackpot, anti-vax numbnuts who, again, the fact that fucking Jenny McCarthy is the reason that we are talking about this bothers the crap out of me, guys.
Is something designed to strike fear into the hearts of non-combatant civilians.
Sorry.
Right?
And
The
that goes to
general
the
population.
anti-vax shit.
Nobody but a tiny class of CEOs has been made to live in fear by Luigi's actions.
Yep.
But nearly everybody knows what it's like to live in fear of having a necessary.
I'm only way out there if you're not a big fan of killing bears or having different women saying that you may have SA'd them or cheating so much on your ex-wife that she just decides to end it and then also just blatantly tells everybody about it.
Medical claim denied. The fear of having your life ruined or potentially ended by a stack of medical bills. And I think in a system with so much violence that's directed from the top down, it should come as no surprise when violence begins to boomerang back from the bottom up onto the 1%. Also, I would like to remind you on the subject of terrorism, nearly 3,000 Americans lost their lives on 9/11, right? This is the largest terrorist attack this country has ever seen. An estimated 190,000 people are murdered each year by our broken healthcare system.
Yep.
That is
and
the
that's how we need
equivalent
to constantly
of
say that.
52 9/11s worth of deaths every year. Every single week, another 9/11 happens. So I got to ask, who is the more prolific terrorist in this equation?
All right, I'm going to get to Chris's response, but before we even get to anything, even Jamie's points here, I want to just discuss what something like this means, having this conversation on a television program, what this means generally. So first, credit to Jamie for being willing to go on and face potential, blowback online for making this appearance, and also credit to Chris Cuomo for inviting her on. This is where we get to how important conversations like this are. Even if you think Jamie goes too far in, advocating for this legal defense fund, this conversation is beneficial to a media discourse. People for a long time now have this idea that the left is about, woke scolding, and it's about hyper reactions online to you saying something improperly or making a mistake and people freaking out over it, when that's not what it's about. The left is simply about human rights and freedom from oppression. And you have neither when corporations dominate a very basic need, such as healthcare. So this conversation, I think, helps pull people back away from a far-right discourse that has been, really dominating for not just since Trump, but forever. There has been this domination of corporate politics, of capitalist politics, has been the dominating discourse in mainstream press for the obvious reason that these are run by capitalist organizations. So there's going to be a certain slant when it comes to simply the hiring process or who you invite on. How often do you see a communist invited onto a news network?
Like never.
I can't even think of another example.
Never.
Maybe at some point it's happened over the past decade or so, but I hadn't seen it. I haven't seen one. So this is the first time I've seen this. This is completely beneficial to just having to pull, or the need to pull the conversation back towards a place that is a little more sane. That isn't to say, there are people that are going to be like, oh, but isn't this just going to turn people off of the left, seeing someone like Jamie here, advocating for raising money for Luigi Mangione? But ask yourself, has that hurt Trump? Think of all the focus on Trump and Trump's cult and far-right politics. Has that hurt him? Has that hurt the Republican Party? Clearly it hasn't. What's ended up happening is by dominating the news cycle, you have people conditioned to thinking in terms of right-wing framing. Even if they don't agree with Trump and far-right politics, whatever is a little more to the left of that, mainstream conservative politics, appears to them to be a little more sane because, at least they're not the crazy Trump cult. But when you have someone like Jamie on, and more people like this, more communist socialists in a mainstream discussion, it helps to pull discourse back towards the actual center. Because right now, all of political discourse is just drenched in far right and capitalist politics. And the anger at for-profit healthcare is real. Anger at how much wealth is concentrated at the top in the hands of a few is real. And getting people to know that broadly, that's what the left is angry about, I think, is a positive thing. Now, quickly before I get to the next clip here on what Jamie was discussing, I think there's no doubt that what Luigi Mangione did, allegedly did, is a violent and illegal act. But what for-profit health insurance does by putting people in situations where they're denied claims is also a violent act. But it's a legally violent act. I think that's the clear distinction there. Both acts are violent, but one is illegal, one is illegal. And I think Jamie here is trying to highlight that, how insane it is that we just all accept, that Americans accept that for-profit healthcare is normal, and it's perfectly normal for people to be denied healthcare and then die, when that should not be normal. So it isn't just Jamie who's questioning, by the way, the terrorism charge. Here's a quick clip from MSNBC, also questioning the charge of terrorism.
I'm just questioning the terrorism charge because I start to worry that you get into a slippery slope by charging, by using the terrorism charge, potentially using it in this way. And maybe I'm wrong, but it's just something that piqued my interest.
Yeah, and it piques my interest too, particularly you and I were discussing during the press conference that not only is it a slippery slope with respect to the use of the terrorism charge, but the very use of certain evidence in this case is itself reflective to some of the existence of a police state. For example,
so much surveillance
all the electronic surveillance that's been involved here is itself something that concerns many civil libertarians. And so you're right to say that this is a concern, and I'll be very curious to see how they attempt to persuade a jury, particularly a Manhattan jury, where Luigi Mangione may have taken on folk hero status already, that he intended this act not only to kill Brian Thompson himself, but to intimidate others in the course of conducting
And just
that
a
killing.
question.
MSNBC's Katie Tur and her guest there also openly questioning the application of the terrorism charge in this case. But Chris Cuomo has a bit of a different perspective. So here's his reaction to Jamie's response at the beginning, as well as Cuomo says something at the end here that I take a little issue with.
Well, first of all, as you may know, Jamie, terrorism is a specific legal standard, right? There's no question that Luigi did what he did in furtherance of a political agenda. He said it, okay? So I don't see this as a question of fact or law. It's about the policy behind it. What I don't understand, and you are somebody who in your positions is constantly trying to embrace the humanity of situations, right? I've been looking at why you support what you do with what's happening in the Middle East conflict. To me, this seems to be anathema to this. Nothing within a system gets changed by violence.
All right. The French Revolution, the Boston Tea Party, the American Revolutionary War, Stonewall riots, all violent acts that led to big changes.
Yep.
Now, you can both condemn and discourage violent acts, and I do.
This is such a
while also understanding the role that violence
privileged
has
position to
played
hold
in history against oppressors for the oppressed. And that's it's always been a reaction to what is already happening to a group of people. It doesn't come out of nowhere. There is historical context.
True Tech, the Cuomo family is a symptom. Yeah, but you know what? David actually made a really good point here. The fact that they're even platforming Jamie and they're platforming her positions, I got to give them credit on that.
For why people act out when they feel like they are being oppressed or people that they represent are being oppressed. And he also attempts there to call Jamie a hypocrite by analogizing Jamie's condemnation of Israel's mass atrocities against Palestinians to what her reaction should be to Luigi Mangione, which I find to be bizarre, because Jamie's support for Palestinian human rights is born out of the oppression of Palestinians at the hand of the Israeli government, which is why Jamie and others are using this moment to speak on the oppression that normal people are facing under a for-profit healthcare system. So I don't think Jamie's being a hypocrite here. I think she's being consistent. But Chris Cuomo is pulling the whole element of power and who is oppressed, who's the oppressor out of this equation, which doesn't make any sense in the context of what the discussions actually are. Let me get now to the last clip.
I want you to understand that I don't think that the energy that you're putting towards backing this guy is getting us to a better place with the problems of the system. That's my point to you. Use the money you raised for the people who need it, not this guy.
Well, I believe we really need to treat
Jamie
the
Peck,
causes of problems rather than merely the symptoms. And I think if you want to know what kinds of tactics I do advocate for,
John Doe, this isn't CNN, this is News Nation.
I think we need a mass movement. You know, change comes from the bottom up,
but not a bunch of Luigis.
Down. And I'm talking about.
No, actually, you know what? That's a good point, John Doe. See, that's the only thing you were wrong about is who this is. No, News Nation could be testing the waters on trying to see, like, tests to see if, you know, they get some leftist support, because that could move the numbers on their end. I'd start watching News Nation if they started having more people on like this. We got to start supporting people that, you know, would have us on.
Mass resistance to medical debt.
Even if they have a
everybody
Cuomo, I hate to
burns
say
their
it.
medical bills in front of the health insurance company offices en masse, that's going to create change. And we're just trying to figure out how to use this moment of of popular excitement that has been touched off by Wait
a minute, she has what now? Wait, what? For real? Sorry about that.
In furtherance of a political agenda. He said it. Okay? So I don't see this as a question of fact or law. It's about the policy behind it. What I don't understand, and you know, you are somebody who in your positions is constantly trying to embrace the humanity of situations, right? I've been looking at why you support what you do with what's happening in the middle system gets changed by violence.
All right. The French Revolution, discourage violent acts, and I do, while also understanding the role that violence has played in history against oppressors for the oppressed. And that's, it's always been a reaction to what is already happening to a group of people. You know, it doesn't come out of nowhere. There is historical context for why people act out when they feel like they are being oppressed or people that they represent are being oppressed. And he also attempts there to call Jamie a hypocrite by analogizing Jamie's condemnation of Israel's mass atrocities against Palestinians to what her reaction should be to Luigi Mangione, which I find to be bizarre, because Jamie's support for Palestinian human rights is born out of the oppression of Palestinians at the hand of the Israeli government, which is why Jamie and others are using this moment to speak on the oppression that normal people are facing under a for-profit healthcare system. So I don't think Jamie's being a hypocrite here. I think she's being consistent. But Chris Cuomo is pulling the whole element of power and who is oppressed, who's the oppressor out of this equation, which doesn't make any sense in the context of what the discussions actually are. Let me get now to the last clip.
I want you to understand that I don't think that the energy that you're putting towards backing this guy is getting us to a better place with the problems of the system. That's my point to you. Use the money you raised for the people who need it, not this guy.
Well, I believe we really need to treat the causes of problems rather than merely the symptoms. And I think if you want to know what kinds of tactics I do advocate for, I think we need a mass movement. You know, change comes from the bottom up,
but not a bunch of Luigis.
Down. And I'm talking about mass resistance to medical debt. If everybody burns their medical bills in front of the health insurance company offices en masse, that's going to create change.
You know what we get if we have a bunch of Luigis? No ghosts. It goes free zone.
Figure out how to use this moment of popular excitement that has been touched off by, a violent act that I would not advocate for as a tactic if it were up to me, but it happened. And we're trying to figure out how to ride that wave and move this conversation forward into mass action that can really make a difference.
Well, listen, I'm here for it. I always have been, but we're covering it. I would love for that to be the discussion. But as long as this guy is glamorized, it is a distraction.
All right. Jamie has already succeeded, because in that clip, you see Chris Cuomo appears to be open to the idea of mass resistance to medical debt, of burning your medical bills, not paying them off on a mass scale. This is something that I feel like he would not be so open to if the discussion didn't start from, why are you raising money for this alleged assassin? But because that's where the conversation began, all of a sudden, when you bring things a little more to, the center of that, then it appears more reasonable. This is why these sorts of discussions are so important. Having communists, socialists on news networks are so important because it helps to move the conversation. So great job here from Jamie. And again, credit to Chris Cuomo for willing to have an honest conversation here.
Cuomo was only half salty.
He has a disagreement and he's voicing it, but he's not doing it in a way where he's shouting her down or not.
Yeah, I dare say he was halfway buttery.
Hearing her out. He's willing to let her talk. He's allowing her to speak and make her points. And credit to him for doing that. There are very few people that are willing to have honest conversations.
Yeah. No, that's what I was trying to say. I'm like, nah, because if we're going to sit here and denigrate fucking Cuomo just for being Cuomo, no. Especially when he is doing, like he's having Jamie on. No, not doing that. I really appreciate you guys checking out my content. If you guys could let me know in the comments below what you thought, that'd be much appreciated. Leave a like and sub to the channel if you haven't already. Either way, I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.